Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Welcome to this program. Tonight, I would like to discuss the issue of the title deeds to land. I believe that granting ordinary Zimbabweans the title deeds to the land, even if it be just the size of a football match, that they had that on which their house is built, will significantly change the political and economic situation in Zimbabwe. And tonight, to help me discuss the issue, I've got Divine here. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us what you think of this issue of giving title deeds to ordinary Zimbabweans? You're muted. Your mic is still muted.
Hello, everyone. I'm back for round two.
I think you've got a problem there. You're coming in and out. You've been out completely, and your picture is frozen completely. I don't know why you're coming in and out all the time.
I gotta move another different position.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay. While he tries to fix his equipment there, I think we can look at this problem. The issue of denying the ordinary people title deeds is not new in Zimbabwe.
Right.
This has been happening even before independence. As an economist and a banker, John Robertson, advised Ian Smith government before independence that giving black title deeds to the land on which they've got their hearts will significantly enhance their economic involvement. Because when you've got title deeds, you can invest on that piece of land with the confidence knowing that you can sell that place as a one going consent. You can build a decent house, you can plant fruit trees and make a lot of investment, digging a borehole and things like that, knowing fully well that even if you decide to leave the place, you can sell it as an ongoing consent. Whereas now, in the rural areas, if wherever you have got built your heart, you can be told by the headman, you should move, and you have no choice but to move. And no banker would give you a loan to build a house, which you don't have any title deeds to. So, Divine, let's hope this time you're able to talk. What do you think of this issue?
I'm still hearing you in and out. That's why I'm still moving around. Those I hope you hadn't started, or you just recording and edit up and you edit. Maybe it's better now. How is it sounding?
Your pictures keeps coming in and out for some strange reason.
I'm going to my upstairs library. That's where I have better signal.
Okay.
Oh man.
And we thought all along that America, you've got advanced technology, and
I I thought it was you all along with the problem with signal.
No, my picture
Yeah.
is steady, and you know, I can see it on the video that it's okay. I think it's much
Right
better
now. Yeah, let me put the power now.
While he's fixing it, that problem, just wanted to say that in Zimbabwe, the rural areas where
Right.
60% of the population, ordinary Zimbabweans, live in,
Right.
they do not own the land. And the irony of it is anyone who owns land in the rural areas, you may find it's either a business person or some of these missionaries.
Right.
If you build a mission school like Gokomere, I can tell you that the chances are those priests were given title deeds to so many acres
Right.
around Gokomere. And yet the blacks themselves who live around Gokomere, you find none of them own even 1 acre of land. They have no title deeds to anything. I find this ridiculous.
But but Gokomere is given title, right?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. I haven't looked into it, but I would not be surprised to find the missionaries in the rural areas would have title deeds.
And then you wonder why there is one, and yet, yeah, of course, you already know the answer to that. So, yeah, so we have an issue that needs to be addressed in Zimbabwe, obviously. That, in my view, 90% of the Zimbabwean population does not hold title. I think that it's the lack of understanding what title is. And I know it's a complex issue. And the land reform and the government redistribution program in 2000 has not addressed those problems, in my view. Yes, they might improve food security and have more slaves who do not own anything, just working without any direction, without
but how did
that
land redistribution change anything? I feel still, I personally don't see how it could have improved anything.
Well, it was necessary. At least it makes us understand in that context that maybe we don't own anything in this planet. We are temporary, and we farm and we live it. I mean, that's what they've trained these ZANU-PF people. They will say, if you give title deeds to people in the rural areas, they will sell the land. They will give the land to foreigners. I remember speaking to Rutendo, having this debate, and he was pushing heavily that the ordinary people would give the land away and they will be recolonized. So therefore, the government is going to keep the land in trust, and they are going to continue to let the chiefs be in charge of distributing the land. And as far as anyone is concerned, if they want to buy the land,
I would have loved to have asked him, do you seriously expect that if you give somebody in the rural area title deeds to a land the size of a football pitch, you'll sell that, and there will be a foreigner who come all the way from USA, America, or wherever to go and buy a piece of land in the middle of the rural areas the size of a football patch.
And create some and make some Airbnbs.
I mean, that is so far-fetched, it's ridiculous. You know,
and create some BNBs. Why not? You know, it's
to be quite honest, if you seriously think they will do that, how many people can come and buy a football patch, a patch of land the size of a football match to build BNBs?
And it's not even a lot. I mean, like, do you know the head rights issue in the United States? where they encouraged colonization of this country, if you were the first head to put your head in a hole, of course, I'll see your head. So it's the first head in. That's why that head gets a right to say, this person is given title immediately. So they had what is called an encouraging of these settlers, these colonialists, to come from England. And so whoever sponsored themselves to come to America, during that passage when they were coming to America, the Puritans, when they were developing the Virginia Company, developed this idea of encouraging people to come from England to the United States. But to encourage them, you get 50 acres if you make it here using your own cash. 50 acres. That's it. And those 50 acres were given to you in the form of a title deed, a real title deed that says this is 100% yours. And this happened to the very original American settlers that were moving from England coming here. The first time they touched this ground, they were given title deed.
Right.
And they were also able to sponsor various people. If I have billions of dollars, I can then say, I need 50 people or even 1,000 people to be sponsored by me to make it to America. Go in the ship, go to America. Whatever land you are given belongs to me, even though I'm in England.
Right.
And then you work for me, but I'll give you 1 acre out of those 50 because I'm the one who sponsored you. So that allowed settlers to come and colonize America. More guns to fight the indigenous people who lived in this country. Now, when that happened, they acquired title, they started to bring slaves because they needed labor. So that started a whole new business empire, and it made America rich. So remember, it started with the land and the title. The most attractive thing was dangling that title to people in England to say, come get this title deed, 50 acres. Whichever way you come, if you send 100 people, that's all your land. You make a deal. So that's what happened. Cecil John Rhodes used the same method, sent many people from England and gave them land. Just as soon as you walk in, ride a horse and we'll draft wherever you can go. And they got the land. Unfortunately, when we attained our independence, Zimbabwe was definitely fighting for the land. And everyone in Zimbabwe was fighting for the land, but forgot to give it back to the people they were fighting for. They just gave them the land without ownership, which means that everybody's just living there. They don't have proof of ownership that can allow the owner to use the land for collateralizing it. And they can either resell it or get loans. They can't do any of that in Zimbabwe because no one thinks they're sophisticated enough to go and get a loan from the bank or to even consider to. They are seen as unworthy to sit across the counter with the bank manager and say, hey, I got title, I need money, They are seen as uncivilized. The same reason Cecil John Rhodes never gave title to Black people, because they were seen as uncivilized and they didn't have any use for the land. Well, the government of Zimbabwe continues.
This report that I've read, and in fact, I spoke to the guy,
right.
John Robertson, and I before he died, he's now late. Right. I used to say to exchange emails with him. He was an economist,
right,
and a banker. And what he was talking about is not 500 acres to a Black person. All he was talking about is that give them a piece of land enough for them to do their subsistence farming, yeah, there's no point in giving me land more than that, what I can use it productively. But by giving them the title deeds to that 50 or 5 acres, yeah, you're giving them the confidence to start building. That is the first stage, the building block. Right. Those who, I'm not saying all blacks are incapable of utilizing more than a hectare or 2 of land. Some are capable of doing it, and some will build their assets to the point where they can now afford to have to buy a tractor, for instance.
Right.
And then you can use the tractor to plow an even bigger piece of land. And you can use that as a stepping stone where you can now look for an area where you can say, well, okay, instead of having 5 hectares, I want 20 hectares. And why not?
Right.
You know, that is what we are talking about here. The reason why Ian Smith would refuse to give blacks, not even title deeds to a few acres of land on which their mud hut is built, is that they would give the blacks the confidence to say, I own this.
Absolutely.
And if when the whites came, which many of them were coming all the time, all these white farmers who were occupying Zimbabwe before independence, they came over the years. When you arrive and you say you're a farmer, I don't know whether they paid anything
right
to the government to get the farms that they did. Yeah. But when you get that farm, you get title deeds. You know, Absolutely. This is what is so annoying. You give the whites title deeds to the land, and you move the blacks who were occupying that land to exactly to region 4 or 5 of the country where the
I was in Mashingo one time, and I was surprised. I mean, I know Mashingo is fertile and all that, but there were nothing but rocks at this place that I went. Nothing but rocks, stones, flies. I was shocked. But that's what the system did. They literally moved blacks to areas that had no fertility, nothing. Literally, consciously did that. And they were never relocated back to their original lands. But even then, these individuals should be given head right. They were there first. And that means I'm talking about the indigenous people, our people who were there, must be given head right. And I know you were wondering, how do we fix this? And as an engineer, I know you have solutions. I know you've come up with solutions. That's why you struggle every day and you try to fix this and try to tell them what to do. And I'm here to help and make sure our voices can go further out. Giving out title deeds is the first step by the president, creating what he called the presidential title deeds. But they are not going far enough because they are promissory notes that don't last, and they go past the amount of time that I expect him to be around to finish the job. I mean, you know, he's giving this title that they'll outlive him, and yet they still don't have title. So he hasn't fixed the problem. It's just a piece of paper in airport, what they're doing in airport. Those are not title deeds. They are
exactly. And in this particular case, we are talking of 44 years down the line after independence. And we are still talking of, I don't know, 80% of ordinary Zimbabweans do not own anything. They are still being
denied. After 96% of Zimbabweans don't own any title to anything, except maybe those who own a car, maybe a house in the city. But when we talk about real land that creates wealth and generational wealth, where parents would like to pass it down their children, there isn't any. Now, you could inherit your rural home in the communal areas, but they are already under a different structure in the Zimbabwean constitution. They haven't been changed. They are still under the Sister John Rhodes Trust, and it's still regarded as a communal area, which is supposed to be not for farming, but for communal service and whatever. When we talk about business, so that means we need to restructure those communal lands to make them viable. I mean, they're reclaiming land. That was the worst land in Zimbabwe, those communal areas, just like desert land in Dubai, or desert land in China, where they are now trying to regenerate and regrow this desert and make them green. That's nice. I mean, somebody will be happy to even take the title deeds, even in those communal areas. But we have to change the law to make sure that fits in, to give people true ownership, where they say, this belongs to your family for the rest of your life, and as long as this family is here. But we don't have that in Zimbabwe. No one can say that except the very rich people. They're the ones who are thinking for generational wealth. Anyone else, the 96% in Zimbabwe, could never think about generational wealth, anything. They could never think about trying to think ahead for their children and their children's future.
No,
there
I think
that opportunity. There is
much,
nothing to give.
It's not so much that the people don't think about those things. It's just the political system does not allow them.
Right.
Because, like I was saying to you, this economist, John Robertson, when he told Ian Smith that this is a solution, this could relaunch Zimbabwe's economy, because these people will really start getting economically active. When you are given that land and you know it belongs to you, you work on it and you make it really productive.
Right.
Even if it's in the arid areas, you make it as productive as you can. But the point there is, Ian Smith did not want to give those blacks that land, because he knew that once they've got the economic empowerment, they would be asking for political empowerment. The next rational thing would be wanting is, why are we being denied a meaningful vote so that we can decide what to do in our own area? And that is the route Ian Smith did not want. And when, after independence, John Robertson gave the same plan to Robert Mugabe, and he rejected it for the same reasons.
So you are telling me, when John Robertson gave the same plan to Mugabe, Mugabe rejected it?
Yeah, he rejected it for the same political reasons. The same reasons why right now you go into the rural areas, ZANU-PF will tell you these are ZANU-PF strongholds. On what basis? They hold the rural people to ransom. They are no more than different from the medieval serfs in Europe.
Right.
Beholden to the landlords who own the land and on whose behalf you live in a cottage, and the landlord can come and tell you, I don't want you here anymore. Without any reason at all, you find yourself on the road.
Out. And so you remember when we were students at the University of Zimbabwe, we talked to Robert Mugabe, back then President Mugabe. He was passive about distributing the land, or he was trying to accommodate a negotiated skills with the white minority at that time, or maybe it's because he's a Mason and a Knight, and the character is never to steal. If you are a Mason, your character is to be honest and to find a way to understand that a child born in a family is not his fault. Like in a Mason, if you're a Mason, if somebody is raped, it's not the child of the child who's been raped. Hey, the child didn't do anything. right? So the character of Robert Mugabe, we were wondering, what was he trying to do? Was he trying to negotiate? But what I'm saying is he was an unwilling. So you are saying that Robertson gave this plan to Robert and Robert wasn't unwilling. He was not willing. Do you know, we had to force him to invade land at that time. It was the last resort. Dr. Hundri had to force me to arm twist Robert Mugabe at that particular time, President Robert Mugabe, late. And he wasn't willing. And
yeah, but we are not talking about taking over the white-owned farms here.
Right.
We're talking about you and me. You grew up in the rural area.
Right.
Your parents did not own that piece of land on which your hut was built.
Right.
And that is what we are talking about here. I agree with the seizure of the white-owned farms was another issue.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that. Why are we saying here that the only title deeds to be given to blacks will be given to former white-owned farms? The answer is no. Rural areas is still part of Zimbabwe.
Right.
Why are we not giving title deeds to the rural folk in the rural areas?
Right. The same concept you were saying. Mugabe was never willing to even give the land in the first place, even grab the land, let alone give them title deeds. You see the point?
No, on the grabbing of the land, I've got my own theory on that. He was very willing to grab the land.
No, he was not.
No. Let me finish the point. He was very willing to grab the land from the whites after 2000. Why?
Yeah.
Because he was running out of assets to give to his ever-demanding ZANU-PF loyalists.
I can go with that.
And this is why when he started the land seizures, invariably, most of that land was given to ZANU-PF.
Never went to anyone else except to ZANU-PF.
Yeah, a few rural people were moved from one village to another. I did visit some of the resettlements in the Chirumanzu area.
Right.
I visited the farm, which some of them had been bought on a willing buyer, willing seller basis, and then the people were moved there and resettled there. These people, some of them found themselves in a situation, as you know, most of these farms, you'll find there will be one big farm owned by the whites, the next piece is another farm owned by the whites, and so forth, away from the rural areas. This was very close to Chirumanzu rural area, but still nonetheless,
the white man's farm is over there across the river.
Yeah, something like 10 kilometers in some cases. And in this particular case,
right,
those people found themselves settled there. There are no clinics, there are no schools,
no sewage.
And some of the roads were in a terrible state. So to the point where some of those rural people moved back to the rural areas for the simple reason that you need these facilities. If you've got a young family, and which will be in most cases, if you're going to go onto a farm and start from scratch, you will not get somebody who is already in their 50s or 60s moving. It's the young people. Young people who recently married in their 30s or so forth will move.
Trying to develop the land.
Yeah, and you have young children. Right. You find the nearest school is 5 kilometers or 10 kilometers away, and if the nearest clinic is the same distance, and the buses are so irregular, to the point where some of those people moved back to the rural areas. So the resettlement
where they came
by Robert.
So you mean so they left the farms they were given to go back to their original rural areas?
Yeah, in this particular case, they had no choice. That's what I'm trying to say.
Because the place was unlivable. There was no facility, nothing. No, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I get it.
They were just left in those farms, and they found themselves having to do the best they can. And in any case, like the argument I made to you before, most people would be quite content with having title deeds to the length, the size of a football match or 2 football matches on which their house is built. Yeah, as a starting point. You fence that area, you develop it, you build a decent home, and with toilets, with clean water supply, and so forth. You will look after it. You will not go around and cut down trees in that area, because you know those trees will benefit myself. But if I know, Kuti, this is communally owned, if I don't cut that tree, you will come tomorrow and cut it, and there's nothing I can do about it. What do you think I'll do? I'll cut it.
Right.
You know, so this is what I'm saying, that in this particular case, the rural areas, the mismanagement of the rural areas has continued after independence, because ZANU-PF will not give people title deeds. And it was deliberate. There's no denying it. Look what Mnangagwa did after the last year's elections. As soon as the elections were over, all of a sudden he starts handing around and saying, "Oh, you people were settled here. It's illegal." What are you talking about? Some of them
and removing them. Yeah.
Yeah. So some of them had been living on that piece of land for 20 years. And some of them were given that piece of land by headmen, chiefs, or ZANU-PF officials. And some of them were complaining. I remember listening to a video of some families in Masvingo who were saying, we were moved here by ZANU-PF officials because they wanted to increase the ZANU-PF vote in the area. But now the individual, I think he probably had lost elections to primary elections to another ZANU-PF or something like that. And so if he didn't feel he had any political loyalty to these people, all of a sudden they're being told, no, that land is not suitable for you. You shouldn't have settled there. And they were all being moved. Their houses burnt. And it is deliberate. It is one way of keeping everyone on their toes, deliberately.
I mean, let me tell you, we have a situation at hand that must be addressed by the people of Zimbabwe themselves. And the government is not going to do it, but it has to get that pressure. And a system that must be established by thinking people. I always say the solution doesn't come from the masses. They are supporters, they are consumers. They are looking for leadership, and if there is nobody there to criticize the government on their failures, then there is nothing, you know. And if people don't even know what they don't have, it's almost like a fish inside a fish pond. It doesn't know it's not home. It doesn't know it's captive.
Well, I won't go that far. I think as a human being,
you think they know because they would have done something. People would have done something. The opposition.
No, I think in this particular case, it's a situation where sometimes the problem with a society is that in some cases you find it's a situation where you have got that weakness. Yeah. There are some people who are happy, to be trampled on.
In that, people are honest to themselves, you know.
Yeah. Because in this particular case, there are always going to be other people who will take advantage of that.
They want to say E.D. fair. So they will be dishonest to themselves and they will never say. But if you speak to some of these ZANU-PF privately, like you say, you're right that they just feel powerless. But yeah, they feel powerless about the situation and they accept it and they just move on. And they've been hoping that things will get better every day.
Well, the other problem in the case of Zimbabwe is that we have got intellectuals who understand what's going on here.
Right.
And those are the worst culprits, because most of them, even straight after independence, when it was clear that Mugabe was fostering this one-party dictatorship, it was a question of say nothing to get along. Yeah. And those are the ones who were more positive. The worst ones is, if you can't beat them, join them. Mugabe and Robert Mugabe has never had problems recruiting intellectuals to fight to fight on their side. Why? Why is it that people like Professor Welshman, Professor Ngube were prepared to work for Mnangagwa as Minister of Finance? In 2018, when after those elections, when he was appointed Minister of Finance, once a journalist asked him, "Do you know that ZANU-PF rigged the elections?" And you can see here is an individual who knows that those elections were flawed. ZANU-PF had rigged those elections, but he was clever enough to say, well, I go by the decision of the Constitutional Court.
Right.
That is a clever way of avoiding answering the question.
That's terrible.
Know the Constitutional Court itself is captured.
Right.
You know, so this is the problem we've had in Zimbabwe, where those people who should know better have sold out. And you can't expect my aunt, my uncle in the rural backwaters,
right,
to be the ones to stand and say, no, ZANU-PF should be accountable. ZANU-PF should fulfill the aspiration of the ordinary Zimbabwean by giving them title deeds.
Right.
ZANU-PF knows if it was to give people title deeds, the next thing they will be asking for is that they will have a meaningful vote. In fact, if the people had the right to own a piece of land,
don't you think ZANU-PF would have scored really well if they'd focused on make sure people get their title deeds? I mean, they're the government of the day for 45 years. People would have been appreciative of that. Honestly, if young people would have been really appreciative of that. They would have said, you know what, this government really took care of us. I would have seen people really seeing that they have potential, they have generational wealth. They can now feel they don't need to cut fees.
You're only thinking of this election and maybe the next one. ZANU-PF is thinking of tichatonga kusvika madhonga amera nyanga. If they'd given, in this particular case, if they'd given the blacks in the rural area title deeds in 1980,
it would work this election, but next election they don't have anything to promise.
Well, by 1980, 1985, when the economy started sliding, those people would begin to say, well, okay, we've got title deeds, but we are failing to perform economically because these ZANU-PF guys are failing to run the economy. Corruption is becoming evident.
Right.
I mean, you remember the 1980s. This is when
issue
was coming up with these stories about Willowville. People could see corruption. Yeah, corruption was becoming a serious problem. Mismanagement was also becoming a serious problem. I told you that I was working Kuzesa. The running of parastatals like ZESA were being run to the ground because of the politically appointed individuals. Now, you
So
go
they were very reckless in the way they ran it.
Well, in this particular case, if you were if you had given people title deeds by 1980, 1980, soon after independence, 1985, 1990, 1995, by then, 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, the people will be seeing what the South Africans have seen. 30 years down the line, the people of South Africa have decided, could ANC, as much as ANC was the front party that liberated, that ended apartheid,
right?
We cannot live on that track record. We need a government that is going to stamp out corruption, that is going to stamp out mismanagement, so that we have got a future. Right now, the ordinary Zimbabwean has no future. And I can tell you, if they had the right to land, and they had all that right all along, and they could say to a ZANU-PF operative who walks into your yard, you could tell him, no, this is my land. Get off my land.
But you can't do that right now.
Political dynamics in Zimbabwe.
You can't do that right now.
You know, at the present moment, the village head will tell you, even somebody like you, if you were to visit your aunt, for the sake of argument, in Gwanda, where you are not known, the village head will want to know, who are you? Are you not from the opposition?
Really?
That, of course they would. If you went there during the elections, they would want to know, why are you here? What are you doing here?
Wow.
Which party do you support? Why? Because they are saying, if you belong to the opposition, you are the enemy of the state.
Mm-hmm.
And your aunt will tell you, you and me can aggressively say, no, I can go and visit whoever I want. But you have got to think about your relative there as well. If you visited them and you give the impression, or even if you were a member of the opposition, you campaign and talk to them about you must vote for the opposition and so forth, there's ZANU-PF operatives who visit your aunt and tell them, so now you belong to the opposition. This year, as you know, there's serious food shortage in Zimbabwe.
Right.
You can bet your aunt will be the one telling you, people are being given food aid here, but they're denying me because they claim that I'm from the opposition.
You're kidding me. So how
you should talk to you have got relatives in the rural area. Right. Speak to them.
How? So this opposition is completely useless, because they should have been speaking about this, fighting this, useless.
The opposition in this particular case, when you're talking of the opposition as MDC, CCC, we were talking earlier on off the record about our friend, Professor Welshman Ngube. He was in the GNU.
He's brave to speak now, just like he spoke during Changirai and all the other times.
No, I mean, he was in the GNU, the 2008 to 2009 and 13 GNU.
And
that was the golden opportunity for the opposition to implement the democratic reforms which have stopped ZANU-PF rigging the elections.
Right.
They did not implement even one token reform. Why?
Well, why should they? Either they are working with ZANU-PF, or they just
wasn't that what they were elected to do?
Right. Or they just feel like they're just gonna run the time. I don't understand why they don't act, because we would be doing differently. This is why I was saying maybe we need to have a different caliber of people who are not afraid to represent the needs of the people honestly, because we have a group of pretenders, because the smartest people are not getting into politics. Maybe we need to bring people.
All I can say is you've been in America and you've been concentrating on your activities there in America, because if you were in Zimbabwe, you would know
Right.
that the MDC guys were bribed by Mugabe during the GNU.
I heard they were given 25 million to send people to the streets. I think it was 50 from another person that helped that coup. That coup was done by the opposition. The opposition, had it not gone to the streets, things would have been different for Robert Mugabe. Not that I care.
Well,
but
the coup was just another brick on the wall. Yeah, the big issue that the opposition failed in was to implement reforms.
Right.
That damage was done during the GNU. What they did afterwards, all this issue of participating in elections, flawed elections, and so forth, was, yes, it contributed to the problem, but that wasn't the big issue. The big issue was during the GNU itself,
failing to institute
implement
the reforms.
Exactly.
And we sent them letters from Cory Booker to say, don't carry out elections in 2018. I actually remember speaking to Nelson Chamisa, and I gave him the message, and he says, but the people want elections, and they voted for elections, but you're going to lose, and you are going to be rigged. Not that you are losing, you're going to be cheated. You're going to win, but you'll never be declared a winner. And I said, the opposition been winning elections every time, but it is not that they are not handing you power. And the fact that there are no reforms, it's easy for them to obfuscate, lie, and make things confusing. But if you look at it, if the reforms were there, your results will be clearly opened up in the public. They will show. Right now, even if you win, the person who declares is them. All those things need to be changed. That the declaration of results, it can't just be them. All those are reforms. They need to be done. But
by the 2018, 2023 elections, we already knew ZANU-PF would rig them because there were no reforms.
Right.
If you really want to ask the question is, why did they fail to implement reforms during the GNU? Because that was when they had the golden opportunity to do so.
Right.
SADC was on their side. It was SADC
who
came up with the global political agreement. And they were the guarantors of that agreement.
And they were helped, and but the guys didn't care. They were being bothered by SADC trying to do all those things. They were like, what are they doing? We just want to go and do what we do and continue doing what we do. I mean, seriously, because they would have implemented everything SADC is saying, or at least done halfway to try and claim what is theirs. But they are happy with the results. There's no way. People got money, man. They got money. These guys like Nelson, I believe they got money to just stay silent. I believe they got money to walk out, to do it the way everything. They got money.
They may have got additional money, but there's no doubt about it that their political seats on the gravy train did provide a lot of income for them. Because I can tell you that their salary and allowances during those 5 years when they were ministers, and for the likes of Douglas Monzora, who was the chairperson of the parliamentary committee that drafted the constitution,
right,
he was given allowances for having these workshops, outreach programs on the constitution consultations. He made so much money that he was able to build a house so big that Jack Scala was making a joke of it. That are you building?
So I'm saying Douglas Ngonjora's house. Do you have a picture?
No, I don't. I know that Job Scala was making a joke of that house at the time. He could have sold it, I don't know. But the point is, he was being paid so much allowances for these outreach programs. Do you know, Kuti, in these outreach programs, they spend an estimated 100 million US dollars. And most of it was being paid as allowances. I know some people who were in MDC, who were senators or members of parliament, and they will tell you the allowances are unbelievable. Most of those people would not miss if there was a constitution-making outreach program in their area, they will attend it because they know from the allowances from that alone, it's unbelievable. It's the same corruption that we are seeing here. I mean, think about it. Remember 2022, November.
Right.
All the MPs and senators were paid 40,000 US dollars housing allowance.
That's bribery money.
Exactly. But that has been going on all along.
There is nothing you can do.
Yeah. And when Chamisa tried to say to these MPs, this is bribery money, he knew he could not force them to give it up.
But because he's not a leader.
No. In this particular case, they had a point. They had a point. They could turn around to him and say, but you, when you were in the GNU, you accepted these bribes. Now you want us to refuse the bribes. Why?
Yeah, but that was if he was a leader, he should have found a way to argue that back. He should have just ignored that and set up the rules that nobody's accepting that money and move on. And anybody who accepts that money, you're out of the party. But the
point I'm making here is that you cannot make that rule when you yourself have accepted the same bribe.
Yeah, but I mean, people learn mistakes. You can, if you're really now honest and want to move forward.
Was that a mistake? Accepting the bribes during the GNU, was that a mistake?
No, it was. I'm just saying. But if he was now saying to others, don't accept the money, is it because maybe he was like, okay, I'm not getting anything. Why are you guys getting something? So if I'm not getting something, nobody gets 40,000. I'll call it a bribe. As long as I'm not in it, then it is a bribe. But I'm in it. It's an opportunity. So it changes with the definition. It becomes corruption if you are not in it. So as long as if he was getting 40,000, I probably agree with you that he wasn't going to say a thing. He was going to say nothing. And his wife was going to say, Tora Maritimo, Dubai and go to Dubai. So you're right. But the fact that he was trying to stop them, it was strategic. I know that he also tried to stop them from going to parliament. But they went to parliament anyway. When he said, don't go to parliament and accept it so we can fight with Sadat. But they were so passionate about going to parliament and refusing to deny the results and working with Sadat that had already declared them bad. They just wanted to go and make money. They remembered they needed to eat. They were hungry. They were waiting. They got bills. They had been spending money campaigning, and they wanted to recoup. It was a business to them in some of these thought processes. These people are not for the people. That's why we need a whole new entire leadership in the opposition, a whole new political system, a whole new party, well-established, well-funded, well thought out, and institutionalized properly to the extent that the rules apply. But who's going to do it? Unless you do it. I'm looking at you.
Well, it's not so much.
Let's go back home and work on. I'm brave. I'm dedicated. I want to do this. I really do, because I want to do it because I feel these guys are so useless. That's why I want to do it.
Yeah,
and I'm so angry that
no.
they can't.
The point is your dedication at the present moment would make no difference, for the simple reason that if you were to go back,
right,
the rational position for a rational person would be, don't participate in 2028 elections. In other words, until reforms are implemented. Yeah. But Chamisa and his followers will participate. And as long as they participate in their numbers, they've given ZANU-PF legitimacy. So your being in the politics on the floor, on the ground, is irrelevant. That is the problem. The problem you're asking is a very rational one. The solution is clear. The only problem we have here is that as long as you have got an electorate that is so ignorant that they failed to make that quantum leap from realizing that the present political system is not working. Yeah, people participated in last year's elections, although they'd been warned several times that if you participate in these flawed elections, you give ZANU-PF legitimacy.
Serious legitimacy.
Yeah. And this is not the first time this has happened.
And this happened in 2018.
This happened in 2013. And yet we still keep on making the same mistake.
And it's not the last time. So what are we going to do?
Well, in this particular case, unless we can make it the last time, then as long as it's happening, it will continue happening. That is the point. The point here is the real courageous people who want change in Zimbabwe have got to address that problem. There is not going to be any shortcuts on that problem. You have a serious problem of an electorate that is so naive, so gullible. If you seriously think you can participate in those elections, even if you say right now, let's form a party, we are not going to participate, which is what Welshman Nube was implying in his recent interview, that we are going to engage ZANU-PF so that we implement these reforms and we do not have a repeat of these elections, which will be disputed at the end of the day.
And I think you'll be a good person to engage, but the point
is...
let
me finish that point. The point is, he has known that all along. And he has been participating in those flawed elections. And I can tell you now that he can make all these noises now, but a few months before the elections, he will change his mind.
And he'll be saying, that is why I was saying, can we trust him? So
well, in this particular case, it's a matter of, that he will participate because he's participated before.
He's done it before. And he said what he's saying now, before. And he's saying it again, before. For the past 20 plus years, he's been saying that they need reforms. But have they delivered the reforms? No.
Exactly.
Zero. So how then do you move forward when you have an opposition like that? We don't have any. And I think that we could potentially start a new opposition. But the problem is, who's going to listen to us? Because people are drunk with Chamisa. They want Chamisa. They're waiting for Chamisa. They won't do anything. They won't listen to anything. They're just waiting for him to take a break. They're waiting to start off. And it's tiresome. Imagine 4 years ago, we are 4 years older. And 4 years before, that's 8 years older. And it'll be 12 in 2028 older. And I hope others can see that they are getting old and they are going to die before Zimbabwe is free from this. And there will be a new group of cats doing the same thing, cheating people. Like maybe it's now going to be Ostalos, because he's obviously going to be the leading opposition future after Chamisa, I'm sure.
Well,
or his son.
In this particular case, as long as you have got an electorate who are so incredibly ignorant, naive, and gullible, it doesn't really matter. You will always have politicians who are willing to take advantage of them.
Right.
It could be 100 years from now. As long as you've got that gullible, naive, and incompetent electorate, there will always be opportunist politicians who will take advantage of them. That is the reality that we've got to deal with. In this particular case, if you think there is a shortcut to that, there is no shortcut to that.
Right.
The Greeks were right. The ancient Greeks, the ones who gave humanity democracy as a system of government, the government of the people, for the people, by the people. They were absolutely right. The one thing they emphasize is the people must be educated, they must be knowledgeable, and they must be diligent. And our problem in Africa, in Zimbabwe in particular, is that we do not have educated electorate. Right. They don't know. I mean, even now, I've been speaking to a lot of Zimbabweans, and I, on the social media particularly, interact with them.
Right.
You can tell some of them that honestly, they have no clue. When you start talking of we need reforms to be implemented, which our friend Professor Ngube was talking about the other day, you ask them what are those reforms? They've been chanting Chinja, Chinja, Chinja for the last 24 years. You ask them, Mochinjachi, what is it you want to be changed? They don't know. And that is why it is so easy for corrupt, incompetent, and opportunistic politicians like Wana, Chamisa, Professor Ngube, Tendai Biti to take advantage of them.
Those are greedy people. Thugs, the thieves, all of them. And how do we fix it? Unless we start something. That's the only way. As an engineer, how do we fix this except to start a new something better, a replacement model that the existing reality, we don't even have to fight it.
Well, you don't replace a population. Let's put it that way. You have got the population that you have right now. And you can bet, like you correctly said earlier on, millions of them are twiddling their thumbs right now, waiting for Chamisa to tell them what to do next. But that is the reality. That's
the reality. And until he's no longer interested in politics, until he walks away cleanly and say he is not doing politics anymore. As long as he hasn't said that, we could be wasting a lot of time.
It doesn't have to be Chamisa. It doesn't have to be Chamisa. Let's be honest about that. It could be Welshman Ngube. It could be anybody. As long
they'll
as
do exactly the same thing. They'll do exactly what Chamisa is doing.
Yeah, it's exactly. I mean, they are only taking advantage of the ignorance of the people, just as much as ZANU-PF have done the same thing.
And our best thing is we put Tsvangirai. He was okay, everything he did, but he was also not a Democrat, unfortunately. And so that was the problem, that we haven't truly, I guess life doesn't work like that. You never really get the right person. You get what you have, a popular person who people just like, a celebrity, even though they are incompetent, but people just like them.
By the time Tsvangirai was in the GNU, if people had their eyes open, they would have seen that Tsvangirai was corrupt and incompetent.
I mean, he spent half the time chasing young girls and all that. Like,
well, yes, that is a problem, but that wasn't the real big problem.
Well, I mean, he didn't have the focus. He had the real things, personal. I guess, yeah. That's just me throwing shade. That he spent most of his time doing that. That was something I sort of said that takes you off from the focus. If you're at war with ZANU in their government and you are eating and you enjoying yourself, they'll poison you. I wasn't surprised that he went out that way because he fell asleep on the wheel. I would have never been irresponsible like that. I would have been stuck, focused and sharp and laser focused on reforms. But I think he thought he can, like you said, there's a brick in the glove and you want to go to a fight with Robert Mugabe with bricks in his gloves. And people really like you. And you are celebrating. Was that your example? I think you brought me that example yesterday. It stuck with me and I really liked it. So you see.
Well, I mean, Tsvangirai was in the 2013 elections. Tsvangirai was so naive. He was so convinced. That's one of, to be quite honest, Tsvangirai was incredibly incompetent, and corrupt as well. But he was so naive and incompetent that he didn't even have the common sense to see you cannot win rigged elections. He was so convinced that
he can run the score.
MDC was so popular that they would win even if
and probably was. It was at that time. People really were MDC.
But they are missing the point. They are missing the point completely. You do not win elections because you are popular.
No, you don't.
No, in this particular case, you've got to say to yourself, if the other side, if the elections are free, fair, and credible, you win elections if you're popular. Right. But if elections are not free, fair, and credible, ZANU-PF has got carte blanche powers to rig elections. They will never lose elections which they've got carte blanche powers to rig. That is the point.
Power to take life and to give life. That's the power they have. You belong to them if you are in that little teapot country. You stuck. So yeah, there was no way they could win the elections. I've told them that no, they've been winning elections. I told Chamisa, you have been winning, but you never be given the power. First, they talk about the military, that you are sellout. Then you got people in the military young saying that you are a sellout. There's this idea that if you're talking to America, you are becoming a puppet to the West.
It's a misconception to say the opposition have been winning elections. Winning in what?
They've been winning, but they never were given power.
But how did they win elections?
I don't think anybody voted for ZANU.
No.
Unless they are completely drilled and brain dead and so scared. And I'm sure they are.
That is precisely the point. In this particular case, if you are saying elections are free, fair, and credible, then you would win them.
Talk about
if you have accepted that ZANU-PF can rig the elections, part of the rigging would be to make sure that even if you get the majority of the votes, when the results are announced, ZANU-PF wins.
Right, but what I'm saying is they don't rig if you didn't win. They only rig if you were winning. And if they believe
No. Rigging in this particular case is saying we will make the process so flawed that we always win.
Right.
Yeah. So in this particular case, that is the definition you should go by. The process is so flawed, so blared that they will see to it that the result always come out in their favor. So if you accept that premise on which the elections are going to be held, you should not complain that you win the elections. That is the contradiction that Chamisa and Tsvangirai fail to comprehend. You cannot, on the one hand, insist that we have got ways of countering ZANU-PF's rigging. Yeah?
Right.
We will go into these elections. We are so popular that even if ZANU-PF tries to rig the elections, we will still win them. Fine, you go with that premise. When whoever is, you have agreed that they will announce the results, and let's face it, ZEC, the same ZEC officials that Chamisa and Tranquilai have been complaining about, they are the ones who agreed that those officials are fine. Right. So you have agreed on the referee, and you have agreed that the referee has got the decision to call the results. When the referee calls the result, then you suddenly say, the referee is corrupt. You failed to define your parameters. This is why people were saying, no, let's get the parameters right. One of the things would be that we should have a verified voters roll, which is common sense. We need to know and agree who is on the voters roll.
Right.
Should they be there? And once you've agreed, yes, X, Y, Z are
or not.
Voters, yeah, we both agree on that. If anyone is missing, they should be added. If anyone is there who should not be there, they should be taken out. So this, we agree then that this is a verified voters roll, which is common sense.
Right.
If you agree to go into an election without a verified voters roll, I mean, you say to yourself, what are you doing here?
Right.
So I, as one of the contestants, I'm the only one who will decide who is on the voters roll. And in some cases, I also decide those people who support you should not be on the voters roll. And in some cases, I also decide my friends whom I know will vote for me will not only have their appear on the voters roll, they will appear several times.
Right.
At the end of the day, you cannot complain that the elections were rigged. You can never say, no, I was so popular because my rallies were well attended. Rallies, yes, your rallies were well attended. And in the case of ZANU-PF, they've been busing their supporters from one rally to another to give the impression that they've got popular vote.
That's what I say, that I believe the opposition has been winning. But I even believe the opposition has been winning, even in South Africa, but the system, well, maybe not South Africa, but they've been winning in Zimbabwe, but they truly did the polling, they realized they are winning, but they were just rigged. That at the end, even if they won, the result being announced is whoever is there. What can you do? You don't announce the result. So, as you say, the reforms needs to start even with who announced the result and how, and I don't know. I think that needs to be looked at. All those are part of the reforms. And as you stated, remove people who are dead in the voters' rolls, double duplicates, even people who are like me overseas. Probably we are voting and we don't even know. We are voting for ZANU for the past 20 years. And
Exactly.
And they got 10 copies of you, and I'm going to get 10 mamwe. I'm proud. I thought and I know what I'm to fix us. So I think that the opposition can and is always winning, but they will never be declared winners. And as I stated, Chamisa is allegedly complicit with it because Vata Karanga, Karanga, and Yanombotonga, Kozopinda Vitori, Kozo DDD. So they have all these things that they are making. It's almost crazy. And these things they are talked about, but they are actually happening. It's crazy.
Yeah, but the real crazy thing is not so much Chamisa. He is benefiting from it. People fail to understand that there are three key stakeholders in these elections. ZANU-PF, of course, is benefiting from rigging the elections because that has assured ZANU-PF retaining power these last 44 years.
Right.
In the opposition, the opposition, as much as they went into politics on the backdrop of promising democratic reforms, what the opposition have quickly learned, particularly during the GNU, is that if we play it smart, we can still get the benefits of being in power without becoming the ruling party.
Right.
We cannot challenge ZANU-PF to get power. But if we support them, in this particular case, the support they wanted, ZANU-PF, Robert Mugabe learned after the 2008 elections, when he was forced into the GNU, right, that the old system of the de facto one-party state is no longer fashionable. He cannot get away with it.
Right.
And that is what landed him with the GNU of 2008 to 2013. What he quickly learned is, if I can bribe these opposition guys to keep on participating in elections and allow them to win some of the seats, yeah. You were talking about, well, what does Chamisa get? Chamisa gets a lot. Even as an opposition leader, Chamisa gets a lot. Last elections, the last 2023 elections,
right?
Chamisa won more than a third of the seats, yeah, because he denied ZANU-PF 2/3 majority. Remember when the results came, before the recalls were made, yeah. It means Triple C was entitled to more than a third of the Political Party Finance Act annual allocation. Every year, the Minister of Finance allocates so many millions of dollars to the Political Party Finance Act, which is then shared. ZANU-PF gets the fraction, which is just under 2/3 of the seats they won in parliament, and then Chamisa gets the rest. And as political leader of the Triple C, Chamisa would have been getting roughly 20% of that payout, tax-free, every year.
Even
after you can afford to dress so nicely. You and me have got content with t-shirts and so forth. He dresses like a Hollywood actor, you know, changing.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen he's become like he starts to. You see, I'm in Hollywood. I've done Hollywood shit. I've done 1.8 billion views. No, not even that many people have put eyes on Chamisa. If I walk out right now with my camera, I'll have people to stop me and want me to write an autograph and say, hey, what's up? What's up?
Right.
And it's important now, when I had that thing in my head where how I look, everything was important. So I see Chamisa every time now he's looking, he's now more focused on personal self, and it's a disease, I know, and I can see it in him. I started laughing the other day, I have to read that, but you see, I had to control I had to understand it. And I said, oh my God, you get lost from this. This power of popularity is terrible. And so he dresses like that now. He is very, there's a difference from the first time, and now you could tell he's making money. You're right, he's making money. But I was just trying to wonder, is he getting money this year on this since he resigned? Is he entitled to some of that?
He's also getting money from the party itself. Let's face it.
Even though they fired him, even though he resigned, he's entitled. I mean, he worked. They are there because of him.
Well, let's look at before he resigned. There is evidence, and many people have said it, that he was given a lot of money to pay for the election agencies.
And he didn't.
And he didn't.
And that's why he's silent and he fears to be implicated in fraud.
And let's face it, there are still donors. Some of them, they may not be genuine donors.
Right.
Let me make it very clear. I think ZANU-PF has got some of these, particularly some of these mafia, gold mafia guys and so forth.
Right.
They know what they need the likes of Nelson Chamisa and his a mob to continue participating in this fraud.
Of course, because if Chamisa is not there, that's not good for them.
Exactly.
They'll never keep.
So in this particular case, it is in their interest to
And
bankroll his political activities.
We ones now being opposed for trying to get rid of Chamisa because we realize he's not going to achieve freedom for Zimbabwe. He's never gonna give us. He's never gonna succeed in this. And we're thinking this way. And now we have two people to fight us: ZANU-PF to say leave Chamisa alone, and the Chamisa's people saying we are sellouts. We're gonna have a problem, you and I, that type of problem. Where
the main criticism from those people it's not so it's coming from a totally different angle.
Right.
What they are saying there is, if you are going to educate the ordinary Zimbabweans to open their eyes and realize they're being shortchanged,
right,
then you are definitely an enemy of ZANU-PF. Chamisa himself is only fighting you, or you'll be fighting you because he wants to keep the political space to himself.
Right.
He wants to be Zimbabwe's main opposition
only one
party leader. You know, but the ZANU-PF operatives will be fighting you if you want to educate the electorate.
And if
you welcome you to participate.
If you want to find another opposition that doesn't want to go for elections, I'm not going to have to have a problem.
No, yeah, exactly. If you're going to start talking about democratic reforms, ZANU-PF does not want democratic.
Oh, don't go to elections. Oh,
exactly. Exactly.
They will have their own goons like Dr. Masia Kasia Muru to legitimize the election. I mean, there's always going to be someone. But
that is a far-fetched Nankiri argument that, you know, look at what happened during the 1978-79 Zimbabwe Rhodesia internal settlement with Ian Smith. Many of the blacks rejected that internal settlement as a sellout. The main political parties, ZANU then and ZAPU, refused to participate in those internal settlement.
Right.
Muzorewa and Ndewaning did. And the international world did not recognize that. Why? Because they realized that this was just a sellout. The same applies to the argument some people are saying, no, even if Chamisa had not participated, Vanamonzora would have given Mnangagwa legitimacy. Listen, in the elections, in these 2023 elections, there were 11 candidates.
You know, I've had a discussion with Monjora. He sounds more honest to me. I know. Hold me there. He sounds more of a statesman, a Democrat. He sounds more competitive, and he was even willing to negotiate. But Sevan Venam, I don't know, but I had sort of thought he was a better guy in terms of pushing ZANU, negotiate with ZANU. But this issue, he was also just a looter, I guess, I wouldn't have never taken advantage of a system like that if I knew there was a loophole. I wouldn't want to be caught in it where somebody's going to mention about it in a way that is not positive.
I mean, if we go back to Monzora, was he not in the GNU?
He was. I mean, I've never been.
And what did he do when he was there in the GNU?
He was in the GNU, right?
Yeah. What did he do?
I was trying to say Pollard. I was never against Pollard.
Forget about Pollard. Pollard is nothing. Concentrate on the big issue.
It's a way to have a negotiated settlement of some sort with the ruling party, or at least even some reforms. It's the only alternative for reforms that are.
No. Like I said, the Pollard is just a sideshow. It has absolutely no relevance. It was not going to change anything anyway. What was going to change Zimbabwe was the GNU. Monzora was in the GNU.
But he wasn't able to do anything.
Yeah. Because like everybody else, he took his share of the spoils of power and was content.
And
they can do whatever they like. I mean, look at what Welshman Ngwe was trying to say yesterday.
Right.
He is now trying, in his interview, he is now trying to say CCC or MDC was on the right track, and the period 2018 to 2023, it lost direction.
Right.
And who was in charge? Nelson Chamisa. His policy of strategic ambiguity was the root cause of CCC's demise. Yes, we were also a part of the elected officials. Yes, we took our eyes off the ball. But who is the real culprit? Chamisa.
It's Nelson.
Yeah. This is just typical what you'll expect him to say.
Right.
The truth of the matter is, by 2018 to 2023, MDC CCC had already lost its direction already. Forget what happened in 2018 to 2023. The real point where you can say, here is the party that has lost a sense of direction, was in 2008 to 2018. That was when the opportunity, the golden opportunity to implement reforms. He is talking in that interview of, we are going to engage ZANU-PF with a view of implementing reforms. If you fail to implement reforms to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections during the GNU, when you had SADC on your side, when you had the global political agreement on your side, when you had the international community on your side, when you had majority in parliament, and you were in cabinet too. What makes you think you now do it when you've got only, I don't know how many MPs are still faithful to that group? There are now 4 factions of CCC, and they've shared out the few elected MPs. In fact, some of them, they elected the ones who were recalled, they've since lost them. So they are only sharing now the ones who are a result of the proportional representation.
Mm-hmm.
They have no power, political power, to change anything. The real pressure on ZANU-PF to implement democratic reforms, to hold free, fair, and credible elections in 2028 is coming from SADC's damning report of last year. That's number one. Number two, is coming from the realization that South Africa's ANC government that had propped up ZANU-PF has changed.
Right.
When Mnangagwa went to the inauguration of our friend Cyril Ramaphosa yesterday.
Right.
He went there because he had to be seen. He had to be there.
He had to.
But even if Cyril Ramaphosa had a chance to meet up with Mnangagwa, he only had to look at him, and both of them would know. Kuti, the olden way of doing things, Kuti, ANC would prop up ZANU-PF. Remember, in 2022, ANC made actually a party resolution that they will not allow regime change in Zimbabwe.
They literally made such a horrible thing. Can you imagine that they could do such?
Well, that resolution was meant to send a clear message to ZANU-PF. We know you are going to rig elections, but we will support you because we don't want regime change in Zimbabwe.
Right.
When Mnangagwa saw Ramaphosa yesterday, Ramaphosa didn't have to tell him that it cannot be business as usual anymore.
Right.
If you rig elections, you're on your own. And Mnangagwa knows it. That is the pressure that ZANU-PF is feeling right now about rigging elections. If they are going to have these talks with Chamisa or Welshman to try to take the sting out of this illegitimacy, or to try to even have the 2028 elections postponed, it will be because they're feeling the pressure.
Mm-hmm.
They know the days of rigged elections and getting away with it
is gone.
Are gone. And our friends, Watchman Ngube and company, they want to be seen as the ones who are pushing ZANU-PF to do it. Only the naive and gullible will believe that nonsense.
Right.
They know if it was not for the SADC report and for the ANC losing in South Africa, those guys, it's a waste of time. ZANU-PF will ignore them completely because they know that at the end of the day, a few months before the elections, they'll participate in those elections anyway. They've always done that. So what has changed?
Right.
That is where we are. But I believe that what has happened in South Africa, I honestly believe is the game changer. This damning report by SADC is the game changer. Even our friends in the opposition, they also know. Kuti SADC, I'm sure you've been following on the social media. There've been a group of some Zimbabweans, particularly pro-Chamisa, talking about we want to demonstrate that SADC should not allow Mnangagwa to be chairperson in August. And they can do the demonstrations. No one it's part of the democratic dispensation that you should allow people to hold a public demonstration. But I can tell you now, if I was a SADC leader, I would just ignore those demonstrations. They're absolutely useless. What are you demonstrating against? What did you want SADC to do?
Right.
You seriously think even now, nearly a year, in fact, it will be a year since the 2023 elections, SADC will still want to step in and say, no, Mnangagwa, you rigged the elections. Let's do something about it. No. If they were going to take action, they would have taken action a long time ago.
Right, but now they want to do it today.
To what end and purpose? Particularly when you look at Triple C has imploded. You want to say ZANU-PF is illegitimate. Then what? You have a unity government of Mnangagwa and his ZANU-PF plus Chamisa. Because Chamisa is no longer, he doesn't have a party anymore. You know, all these other four factions, today he appears to be friendly with one faction, but he doesn't want to associate with them. Every time they do something or they say something, he distances himself as if I have nothing to do with it. In other words, Chamisa is just the candidate of Triple C who contested last year's presidential election. But now he's standing on his own. So if you're going to form a unity government, it'll be Chamisa. And then I suppose he will have to nominate who he wants to be in that GNU with him. His wife, his cat, his dog. It's laughable, you know. And if you are a SADC leader, do you seriously think you'd want to be involved in such a mess? The answer is no. You've got your own other problems to solve. Zimbabwe was given the chance to implement the reforms during the GNU.
Right.
You messed it up. You failed to implement even one token meaningful reform. Not even one. SADC leaders told Morgan Tsvangirai in June 2013, do not go into these elections without reforms.
Right.
And what did Tsvangirai do? Ignore them.
Ignore them.
Yeah. So what did you want SADC to do? And now you want to hold demonstration to denounce SADC. SADC have let us down. What did you want SADC to do? You let yourself down. Last year, SADC came up with a report, and courageously, and they knew ZANU-PF was not going to take this kindly. But Dr. Neves Mumba was very courageous to read that report and say these elections were flawed. And ZANU-PF, yes, they attacked him. The hunting dogs were on him. And they've been on him for a long time. But he stood his ground. He refused to recant. He refused to withdraw that report. That report was finally accepted by SADC itself. And
right.
Even with the report made public, the SADC report, the AU report condemning the election process, you are the one who was admitting earlier on that Triple C guys still went ahead to take up their Gravitran seats.
Right.
Why? And you are right to say they were, this to them, this is business. They're trying to recover their expenses. So you are not interested in free, fair, and credible elections. You're only interested in what ZANU-PF is offering you to participate to give the process legitimacy. That's all you're interested in. So don't pretend that you care about free, fair, and credible elections. Don't pretend that you care about ending the tragic suffering of the ordinary Zimbabweans. You don't care. That is the truth. They've never cared, these guys. As long as they get their share of the spoils of power,
right,
they participated in 2028 elections without a single reform implemented.
Right. That is all. That is exactly the point, that they have been aware but unwilling because they are benefiting. This is a job to them. They're just waiting for the natural processes to take its place. You know, this is a job to them. You know?
What natural processes are you talking about?
The death processes of the elderly ZANU-PF. If they all die slowly, because, you know, look at Mohadi was saying he's old. He agrees to that.
I think that is another misconception by many people, many Zimbabweans. They think that if the generation of ZANU-PF who were involved in the liberation war, if they die, they will have a democratic ZANU-PF? The answer is no.
Right.
ZANU-PF is like a conveyor belt.
Wow.
As some of the old guys die, the generation is coming behind them. And they are going to claim and use the resources that ZANU-PF has amassed to maintain ZANU-PF in power. They've got an invested interest in keeping ZANU-PF.
So basically, they have created generational wealth for themselves.
Yeah, it's being passed to the next generation. If the Lacoste faction had not won in 2017,
right,
the G40 would have won.
And they would have done the same thing.
Yeah, that's your generation. So by the time they die, you will be dead too. You know, so that is a misconception. People who think that somehow if ZANU-PF, the current ZANU-PF leaders who were in the liberation war die, somehow Zimbabwe will become democratic. They are being naive. ZANU-PF is regenerating itself. And they are using the resources to make sure power does not change. Because those people, they know, if power was to change hands into maybe more open-minded, more democratic people like yourself, they may find themselves in serious trouble. Even those who have died, their children will find themselves in serious trouble. People will be asking Bonam Mugabe, how many farms do you have?
They're gonna have to run and leave the country.
Yeah, but even then, even if you leave the country, let's face it, short of you going to Mars, if you're on this planet, if you're in America, if there was to be a competent opposition leader in power, I can tell you now that all those ZANU-PF leaders who have left the country, and some of them have settled for a long time now in America, here in the UK, or all over Europe and so forth, one can still trace what have you been living on. Some of their assets, they still have got them at home. The mansions, they're still at home. Look at this bulletproof mansion. Where did you get the money to build that mansion? He may be in South Africa. What is he living on? And probably driving Porsche cars. Right. Where did you get the money to drive those Porsche cars? If there was somebody who is competent, I can tell you now, most of these people, they've looted the wealth, they know it, and they can't hide it. It only takes a competent leader to say, listen, we have got a situation here where the other day there was on social media a report of Bulwe Mpilo Hospital, where patients with cancer were sleeping on the floor because they don't even have something as basic as a bed. Yeah, I spoke a few years ago with a nurse who had been a nurse in Mpilo Hospital, and she had gone to Zimbabwe for a holiday. And she was telling me she visited Mpilo Hospital and was shocked to see that some of the wards did not even have something as basic as a thermometer. To check the temperature of the patient, they had to go to another ward that still has a thermometer.
Right.
Something as basic as that in this day and age. And then you find somebody is living in unbelievable luxury in Dubai. I mean, if you are a responsible leader, you say to yourself, listen, as much as we have got nothing against you living in luxury, let's be honest here. You are living in luxury at somebody else's expense.
Right.
When somebody else with cancer has got to sleep on the floor, forget about the equipment to treat him. Just give him decent comfort of a bed. He is in hospital, for Christ's sake. He can't even sleep on a bed because you stole the money so that you could live in unparalleled luxury in
Right.
Dubai. For God's sake. I mean, this is ridiculous. This doesn't make any sense at all. I think you should come back home now.
Right.
And go and build your grass-thatched hut in in Gwanda and live like an ordinary African. In fact,
and reside there.
Yeah, exactly. And you should enjoy the hardships of the people of Gwanda. Have endured for the last 40 years because of your greed.
Right.
But to be quite honest, I wouldn't say that the people should revenge, but at least you've got to recover some of that incredible wealth. You need it to rebuild the country. We were talking earlier on at the beginning of this discussion about title deeds. Now, those people, when you finally give them title deeds, some of them are so poor that honestly, even building a decent home, they don't have the resources for it.
Right.
So why not recover some of that stolen wealth and produce a rotating fund in which you can say this pool of money will be used as seed money for those who get title deeds so that they can now come and borrow money to build a decent home. Even the kind of house you find in the high density suburbs. Yeah, the matchbox, the 4 rooms, nothing fancy. That is the seed money. They will be given, for the sake of argument, 5 years grace without having to pay anything. Then after that, you've got to repay it in 10 years. You'll be surprised. Honestly, you'll be surprised how many people will build a decent home in their rural home right now.
Mm.
And that would spur economic growth because all of a sudden, you have got all these builders now who are building these houses and being paid. And they can use some of that wealth to build their own home, a more decent home. And the whole thing will be self-generating, instead of that money being stuck in a bank in Singapore. Somebody was telling me the other day that Grace had, was it you? Was telling me she had something 2 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in Singapore. What is that money doing?
It's just whatever she wants.
Exactly. So in this particular case, with that 2 billion alone for the 8 rural provinces in Zimbabwe, if they were to each get their share of that 2 billion as seed money, right, and give it a competent guy to run it as a bank, and each province could have their own projects which they will fund. And if they manage that seed money properly, the province will benefit.
Right.
The motive for that province to run that bank efficiently would be unbelievable. People like yourself who are overseas,
Right.
you hear of a project like that, and you hear that it is being run competently and efficiently, you would not hesitate to say, okay,
To invest more money.
yeah, I can give you an additional amount of money to help you, because you know it is going to be run properly.
Right.
Even if you say don't repay me afterwards. I've known people who are former people's group, former people, students groups, making significant contribution to their former school.
Right.
In terms of the donations and so forth. But that has only been wasted, in the sense that we are talking of a regime here that seems to believe that government resources are first and foremost for the ruling elite. And so they've been creaming off all the money. And those schools, some of them, I mean, you can't believe it. You know, you find a school like Mount Pleasant. I remember Mount Pleasant High School as, you know, a posh. This is where the whites used to go to. The other day, a few years ago, I saw it. I don't know now. Probably if you have got relatives, they could tell you what is happening there. But a few years ago, I remember seeing photographs of Mount Pleasant swimming pool. It had been neglected for so many years. Forget it. Just disappeared. This is lack of investment. All those facilities, you can forget it. Now, if that is happening in Mount Pleasant, where at least for the ordinary Zimbabweans, we could say that is where the ruling elite in Zimbabwe, in Harare, live.
Right.
You know, these are suburbs like Mount Pleasant, Borodale. These were the suburbs where the actual rich people live. If the schools there are in that sorry state, think of the schools in the rural areas, the sorry state they are in. Is it any surprise that you find when the results come? I remember in 2019, the MP for Chirezi South called all the headmasters of the schools in his constituents from grade 7, Form 2, Form 4, and Form 6. The best performing schools in that constituency had a pass rate of 3%. Those are the ones that will say, oh, hey,
right.
3%. The others, 0. You say to yourself, and okay, Chirezi South was not the only constituency. That I can tell you, it was the same thing in almost all the other rural schools, except for the missionary schools. The government ones, forget it. The pass rate is 3%. What kind of citizens do you think you'll get from there?
Right.
You seriously think you go there and argue with them on the need to, we were talking of a democracy works with an educated, knowledgeable, and diligent citizen. Do you seriously think those people will ever make it in that grade of you?
Right.
You're an educated, knowledgeable, intelligent citizen. The answer is no. No. And it's not because they are stupid. It's just that you never gave them a chance. Grade 1, you know, doesn't matter whether they've learned anything. unongosundidzirwa. Doesn't matter, go on to the next grade. Go on to the next grade.
Right.
Unopedza grade 7 yacho nayo with 0% pass rate, and guess what? You go to Form 1. Unaenda Form 1 sake usina kupasa kana anything per grade 7.
Right. As we go on.
I mean, it's a disaster waiting to happen. You never gave them a fighting chance, those people. And then you tell me there's somebody who is sitting on $2 billion US.
I mean, they don't care.
Yeah. Unovatira mazai here, uri huku here, unoti ndakavatira mazai. 2 billion. It's criminal. That kind of money should be recovered for the good of the country, for the good of the people from whom you robbed.
Right.
And it will be very difficult because, let's face it, if you are one of those people who wrote your grade 7 or your Form 2 or your Form 4 or your Form 6 and you failed, you cannot turn back the clock and say, okay, you can go back to Form 1. No, you've lost out because it's a conveyor belt. You know, there are other kids who are coming in who want to go to Form 1, to grade 7, and so forth. You cannot go back and learn if you've lost the chance to learn.
Right.
One of these, the Minister of Education, I think it was last year or the year before, was called to a parliamentary committee and was telling them that there are students who have done in Form 3 who cannot read and write. That's how poor our education has become. I know kids here in UK who are doing the equivalent of grade 3, and they can already read and write. Their maths is great. They can add and so forth. And yet, here is somebody. When you've done Form 3, that means you've done grade 7, and then the 3 years education, 10 years, the equivalent of 10 years formal education, and you still cannot read and write. Why? It's because when you were in grade 7, in grade 3, you had not learned those things. But you were encouraged to carry on, and you did carry on. Of course, it's really difficult to learn grade 4 stuff when you have not learned grade 1 and grade 2 stuff. Soon after independence, I took a part-time job with adult education. I thought it was a brilliant idea. Yes, let's give these people who, for whatever reasons, failed to go to school and have a formal education. Adult education, a brilliant idea. And I was teaching students maths in Mkoba.
Right.
Some of them, you could tell, yes, he or she would have done grade 7. But others, you could tell, no, this guy, he enrolled to do Form 1. Or some of them, I think I was doing Form 1 and Form 3. Some of them Form 3. He claims that he has done Form 2, but he has not. Or he claims he has finished primary, he has not. And you try to teach them Form 2 or Form 3 stuff when they don't even have the the knowledge of grade 7 stuff. That's when you realize this is an impossible task. They still had the mentality of primary, 5 minus 2 is 3. That is straightforward. When you say 5 minus 10, they'll tell you impossible. They still haven't figured out this mentality. You cannot take minus a bigger thing from a smaller thing. You try to give them the example. Listen, you are an adult. Yeah, you go to Nyore Zimbabwe Furnitures. You get a bed worth $100. That's minus to you. And you pay them $10 a month. When you go to that, it's 100 minus, is 10 minus 100. You have paid 10. That means you're now minus 90. But they couldn't get their brains around it. You could tell here is somebody who really didn't finish primary school. You know?
Right.
And you try to teach them the primary stuff and say, okay, for the next 2 weeks, let's just concentrate on the primary stuff.
Right.
So that you really catch up. But I cannot spend much more time than that because it is unfair to the other students. They are here to learn Form 1 or Form 3 stuff. And we can't spend the whole term talking about primary school stuff. But I'll quickly go through that with you. But you have got to catch up on your own.
Right.
But personally, if you want my advice, I would say to you, be honest with yourself. If you didn't finish primary, go back to primary. There's no shame in that.
Right.
You know, some of them would, no, didn't go to Nankiri evening classes, the primary, no, do it as secondary. And they're overconfident. They say, no, I think I can catch up. No, the truth of the matter is you are failing to catch up. Not because you're stupid, but because you never learned those things. You were supposed to have learned them. That is trying like building a house without a foundation. It will fall. It's just a matter of time. You know, and that is exactly what is happening. Unfortunately, I had to move because the work I was doing is I couldn't stay there all the time. So I ended up, I think, moving to Harare and so forth. So I never know how those students performed. But you could tell to most of them, there's no way they would pass. Some of them do ndakaita grade 7. So ndakaita grade 7. Wakabuda nechi apana. 0% pass rate. One's in that Form 1, 2. End of Form 2, my exams, 0%. A waste of time, a waste of resources, you know, and a waste of humanity. All these students you have been churning out over the years, we have learned absolutely nothing. In this day and age, you live in America, you know how competitive the Americans are, you know. How can your Zimbabwean student compete with those American students? They have no chance. And yet in life, that is where you've got to compete. You know, and those guys in our political system, they become ministers. You know, how did you become a minister? You can't even write, for Christ's sake. You know, but because they've got the right connection, particularly now, where if to be a candidate, you've got to have $1,000.
I'm going to work tomorrow.
Yeah.
Massive Donald Trump. I'm gonna go to work. I wanna call my patients for tomorrow, and then we should do another second set properly. executed this time, and well, you know, I know you're recording, so and then we'll do a nice live stream next time, hopefully. Yeah, and we'll carry more conversations. I think I'm gonna want to be a regular comeback kid on this station and bring some of our people to listen to what you are teaching, because it's very vital. It's important, you know.
Well, it'll be great to have more people to talk. Yeah, yeah. Tomorrow, I don't know whether you do you want to set up. We can have it on your.
No, we can do it on your side, and then we can always broadcast some. I don't have a problem broadcasting some to the
Okay.
to Twitter, because I think Twitter is where we need to market. That's where things are going.
Okay. I'll try to find out about your Twitter account.
Video.
I'll try to find out about your Twitter account and see whether we can.
You will never look back on that, because that's where everything is going, and you have monetization also, which makes it better, because in Twitter you can get thousands of people watching immediately, so that's monetization. I mean, I think that, I mean, it's a talk and it helps to, you know, it's not a lot, but it's good. There's nothing wrong with that, you know. I didn't make anything on my billion views, because people were stealing my videos, showing it there. By the end, and televisions would show my commercials without my permission.
Oh dear.
But I had True TV paid me about 11,000 for my broadcasting activities, but that was it. That's all. That is much as I got. But yeah, it's been nice talking. I wanna make a few calls.
Well, let's. There are some people who are listening right now.
Oh, really? I didn't know people were listening. I thought you had just recorded it so that you can play it. Oh my God!
At the moment, there's 4 people who are listening. Actually.
Oh, that's amazing! I didn't know they were listening. I didn't know you had broadcast.
I'm not sure. It could be just on because I'm
recording. Yeah.
Live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So I don't know other channels. I think this could be YouTube.
Right.
But anyway, it doesn't matter. What I was going to say is, in case they want to join us, what time suits you tomorrow?
About the same time. I'll be done. About the same time I called you when I came back today. The first trial was busy time. Like after I came back, when I called you and I said, hey, I'm back home.
Okay, all right. I'll check the time.
Right. The first time I called you when I came back after it broke down. Yeah. All right. I'll hit you up.
Okay. All right. We'll try tomorrow, same time.
Same time we'll work on continuing this, because this is important.
Well, it is important. I think educating the electorate in Zimbabwe is the number one.
And I want to go home. I want to start Zem as a party. I want to challenge this. I want to give it a try, because these guys are just too bad. They can't be allowed to do this. We have a duty to do something also. And then maybe we can ask for reforms. We can go in and meet Mnangagwa and say we want reforms. I mean, I don't know what else to do. I think that dialogue is always important, even with your enemy. Israel is discussing right now with Hamas, Ukraine with Russia. You always must talk to your enemy. Genghis Khan used to speak to his enemy. I used to tell Chamisa, talk to them. Talk to them. How do you fix anything if you're not sitting at the table? Go sit at the table. Go find this man and talk to me. He would not do it, because people have a reductionist mentality that it's either you don't talk to them or you talk to them. But they're doing it in the background. They just don't want to be seen. So I told Monjora that, and I said, Monjora, go meet Mnangagwa. Go and say, we want this reform, this reform, this reform. Go with demands. Because he's the man fucking up the country. You know it. Go with demands. And look him in the eye, but don't threaten him, because he'll kill you. Because he'll kill you, he got nothing to worry about. He's 84 years old, and he'll kill you, and nothing will happen to him before next 3 years later, he's gone. You got nothing. You die because you got killed by an old man. That's the worst thing that could happen to you, you know? He's the worst thing. And I think that's why Chamisa has been low-key sometimes, you know? I kind of forgive him if he is not part of ZANU-PF. If he hasn't any deals with them, if he didn't open Tsvangirai's door and let him in, knowing fully well when I asked him, he says, Tsvangirai is the one who arranged everything. And I said, but he's not there to say it, but I believe it because he let them in. I would not have let them in the house. So here they are, Mnangagwa, Chiwenga, they go into Tsvangirai's house.
Yeah, anyway, let's conclude this one. So right. we'll pick up tomorrow from where we okay? All right. Okay. Thank you very much. And it was nice talking to you.
Oh, man, it's been a wonderful
tomorrow. Yeah, yes. And you hear, definitely you can be certain of hearing radical ideas. Okay, thanks very much, Matt.
All right, bye.
Okay, good night.